Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of True Crime and Chill. I am your host, Gabby, and today we have a larger panel than we have in the last couple episodes. We are once again joined by Haley. How are you?
Good. I'm getting a little bit more professional. I bought a little microphone from Best Buy, so I'm testing it out.
Nice.
Yeah, as a host, I feel like that's something.
Yeah, I feel like I don't know, it kind of just looks pretty cool. I can't wait till the stand comes in so like people can actually see it, not just half of it. But surprisingly, this one from Best Buy was only $70. They have some packages on Amazon where you can get this in a stand for like $45, but I didn't know the brands very well, so I went for this one. But
Is it Bluetooth?
I believe it can be Bluetooth. Here's the box it came in. Let's see. It says it's for podcasting, gaming, and video chatting.
Okay.
So it's USB, so it connects to the laptop, but you can also connect to your phone, I believe. I'm not sure, though.
Okay, cool. And we are also joined once again by Mitch. How are you doing?
Good. Just enjoying, Sunday, kind of dreading Monday. But otherwise, just taking it easy. It's been a wild few weeks.
Yes, it definitely has been, and now quarantine is ending for most of us, so sounds like we're all getting back into life pre-quarantine, right?
Trying to.
Yeah.
I'm getting called out to crime scenes again, so there's that.
Oh boy.
And we have a guest that we haven't seen on the show since like our second or third episode, which was murderous NFL players or athletes. But Mark, how are you doing today? Welcome back.
Thank you, ladies. It is a pleasure to be joining and excited to talk a little crime.
Yes.
Welcome back, Mark.
I know. Mark likes to do all the podcasts.
I have to keep up with Haley.
So we have a pretty interesting episode for today. Last week we covered three men that we learned had a lot more in common than we originally thought had in common. Spoiler alert, if you didn't listen to the last episode. They're all necrophiliacs, they're all cannibals, they all have mommy issues, and they tried to make the insanity plea so they could plead guilty, which was very odd. We didn't come to that conclusion until the very end of the episode, but it's just very odd. But nonetheless, it was very interesting, and I chose all three of those murderers by random, and were way too similar than I thought they would be. So I was really happy with how well the episode turned out, and it sounds like you guys really enjoy it, which warms my heart. But today we're going to be talking about some serial killers who we don't know who they are because they're unsolved, and they remain unsolved to this day. And there was one serial killer in particular that I wanted to cover for this episode, which was the Golden State Killer, but he was captured 2 years ago. So he can't be on this show, unfortunately.
Maybe next time.
He's excluded.
But the two killers that we're going to discuss, they're very interesting in their own right. And they have one similarity that I noticed. Maybe one influenced the other. I guess we'll have to find that out for ourselves. But before we discuss those two, there was a slew of true crime news this week. It felt like it was one thing after another. Because I think it was Wednesday, there was just a crap ton of news, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm just so overwhelmed with everything that's going on. And it has to be talked about in this podcast, because what true crime podcast would we be if we didn't discuss any of this, right?
Yes.
Absolutely.
So I think the main news that we got this week was Derek Chauvin, who murdered George Floyd in Minneapolis. He was originally charged with third-degree murder and I think it was third-degree manslaughter.
I believe so.
Yes, he was charged with manslaughter, but I think it was Tuesday or Wednesday, they bumped that up to second-degree murder. In addition to that, the rest of the cops that were involved were also arrested. They were charged with aiding and abetting and not stepping in to try to help George Floyd when they should have. In addition to that, it sounds like, I think it was Thursday or Friday, Minneapolis banned chokeholds and mandated cops to intervene if anything like this ever happens again. So why don't we start with the second-degree murder charge? Do we agree with that? Do we think it should have been first-degree murder? Do we think that maybe it was too high and they should have stuck with the third-degree murder charge?
I think like first degree, proving premeditation might be a little bit too risky for them in court. So I think second degree was the better option for that reason. And even then, they might just be doing second degree to get the third degree conviction because, you know, sometimes they have to up it so that they can get it. You know, they don't want to go for third degree and then not get it. And he doesn't see any jail time, or he gets, you know, some stupid probation or something for taking a life. Right. So in my opinion, that's why they went for second degree, because for the evidence they have and just for the option of getting it, like just for, I don't know the word I'm looking for, just to hope that they get that conviction, it'd be easier to prove second degree than first degree.
Yeah.
Yeah, oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, just weigh in on thoughts.
Yeah, I agree with Haley. I really wonder, you know, trying to take out the politics out of this, but I really wonder what the investigators found that could have upped it to
right.
a second-degree murder charge, because it's my understanding that the difficulty with these kinds of cases that involve cops and you know, brutality ending in murder is establishing intent, because you know, a cop's job is so inherently dangerous. They're given more leeway when it comes to using you know, tactics to subdue you know, criminals or alleged criminals. So that's where I'm kind of iffy about the second degree murder charge. Do I feel that there was, you know, some sort of deliberate actions with Chauvin involved? I feel that's, you know, the video shows it, but at the same time, you know, I don't know if it's my biases getting in the way because of what, you know, however I feel about the things going on. But I also wonder, like, from the defense lawyer standpoint, you know, if the second degree murder charge might be a little bit difficult for the prosecutor to establish that Chauvin was trying to kill George Floyd with, you know, the intent to murder, instead of just saying, hey, it's part of his job to subdue someone who might be resisting arrest or whatever. I want to know if the police found something additional that we don't maybe know yet, that could have, you know, given them this idea to say, hey, let's up the charge and let's see if we can, you know, get him on this because of, you know, whatever we found.
Yeah. I mean, just in terms of my immediate thoughts when I saw this, I was worried kind of right away, because I was thinking like, oh, okay, they're bumping these charges up, but what if that becomes more difficult to prove? And actually, it was Haley in our group chat who said, well, no, you can actually convict on that third degree charge, even if you don't convict Chauvin of second degree murder. So then I was a little bit relieved, like, okay, well now, hopefully at least this gives him a fallback to get him on something. But I gotta say, I mean, as much as obviously the focus right now is on you know, the issues within law enforcement as a whole, our legal system is a whole other animal, and there are so many loopholes when it comes to how a lawyer can get a defendant off. It's just I think I'm not too thrilled with the with our legal system. Well, judicial, I guess, is the best way to put it. To be more technical, I just think that this could end poorly. It could end poorly if the correct verdict isn't returned. Chauvin gets off on some sort of technicality, some sort of loophole. It would really set back any progress that's been made. And so I really hope that the right verdict is brought down. But it worries me a little bit. I just because the judicial system is just. It worries me, but I mean, in terms of chokehold, I mean that other news that you brought up, Gabby, about chokeholds being banned by the Minnesota police. That's awesome gesture if it's actually followed. I mean, I think I had read that chokeholds had been banned in New York for like 19 years at the point of Eric Garner's death, and that's how he was killed, by chokehold. So I mean, if it's followed, then that's fantastic. Then that's a real step in the right direction to make sure that there's no excessive force used. But if it's just something for optics, then it really helps nobody.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but Chauvin had used a technique that was against their policies already, right? Like kneeling on somebody.
I would hope so.
I think so, but I'm not really sure at this point because everyone is so heated that you just see so much news being bombarded and thrown out left and right that it's kind of difficult, at least for right now, it's difficult to decipher what is true and what is not true. Because, I mean, at some point there were people debating whether the original mugshot was actually Derek Chauvin, and there was a conspiracy behind that. So, I mean,
I haven't seen that.
People are so emotional that they might just try to throw out anything to get a rise. But
true. I did see, I don't know if it's true, but I did see that some officers had resigned from Minneapolis PD and that quite a bit had taken early retirement. And they were just like, basically their words were, you're on your own now. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that's true. And I just wanted to point out what I mean by him being able to be like charged with third degree is most likely a plea deal situation. So they charged him with second degree, but they might plea him down to third degree. Mm-hmm. Because I've seen that happen where here in Texas, they get charged with capital murder and then it gets pled down so that person actually sees jail time, but it doesn't necessarily get the original charge. Not that in the court, they're going to be like, oh, we can't get second degree. Let's just go for third.
Yeah. And when I found out that he got charged with second-degree murder instead of the original third-degree murder, my thought was, with what Haley mentioned, was they were going to try really hard to show that second-degree murder was a little too excessive and he was more suitable for the third-degree murder charge. And it brought me back to the cop in Chicago who was convicted of second-degree murder last year. The murder happened, I think, all the way back in 2016. It was Jason Van Dyke and the murder of Laquan McDonald. I think you guys, from the last time I brought this up, you guys don't remember this happening, but a Chicago police officer arrived to a scene, and allegedly there was a black man with a knife who was breaking into cars, and instead of waiting for a taser, a police car with a taser to arrive to the scene, Jason Van Dyke shot Laquan McDonald 16 times, and they left him lying dead in the street until paramedics arrived. They didn't perform CPR or anything. They just let him lie there until EMS arrived. And there was a whole huge controversy with that because the city of Chicago kind of kept that whole mess hush-hush until civil rights activists and civil rights lawyers said, this is really fucked up. You can't keep this a secret. you have a cop that used excessive force and killed this man, whether he was unarmed or not, you should not have shot him 16 times. And he got charged originally with first-degree murder, but a jury ended up convicting him of second-degree murder. So that's why when Derek Chauvin's charge got bumped up, I was like, okay, they're going to probably try to do something in a similar fashion with the Jason Van Dyke case and hope that a jury can find that a third-degree murder charge is more fitting.
Yeah, hope so.
Yeah, but in other news, Breonna Taylor from Louisville, who was also murdered by police in Louisville, the FBI has decided to investigate this case because there was a rumor that Breonna Taylor's boyfriend may have been the one who murdered her, but people are now believing that this was the cops' fault because of a no-knock raid. And a grassroots movement in Louisville actually protested in I think the city capitol in Louisville, and they were trying to get no-knock raids to be banned. And Louisville actually on Friday made it a law that police cannot perform no-knock raids. So hopefully there will be no one else who ends up like Breonna Taylor. Did you guys hear about this news? Because I was absolutely ecstatic about that.
I don't think I did, but I don't really watch the news very much because a lot of time it's just very negative. I mean, obviously this is a positive thing, but I just feel like the news, the media and stuff is so negative a lot of the times that I just don't want to bring myself down watching it.
Mm-hmm. The news is not a safe place.
No, but I also hadn't seen it on social media, which is where I see a lot of things, through Twitter and stuff. But I was off of it for a little bit. You guys know that I worked a crime scene for like 7 hours the other day, so I've just been trying to catch up on sleep and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I think that if I hadn't seen the news about Louisville doing that stuff, but if they did, I think that's a good thing, to be quite honest with you, because in situations like these where unfortunately the police went to the wrong location, it resulted in in a crappy situation where especially in a state that's, if it takes place in a state that's very, Second Amendment, pro Second Amendment, people who own guns are gonna react to a raid like that, by defending their house, and it can create a really volatile situation where people can get hurt, like in Breonna's case, where I don't know who shot first, and I don't know how that happened. I don't really know what's fact or fiction at this point, but I do know that it resulted in the death of someone who, was not doing anything wrong. And I think that it's a step in the right direction, because the no-knock raids, especially if they're not done with careful information, it can result in really crappy situations like this. I know that there was another case that I heard where, again, it was a no-knock raid. Someone felt threatened. They grabbed their gun to defend their home. They shot at the police, and unfortunately, one of the bullets ended up, I think, shooting a kid in the head. I'm going to look up the specifics. I don't want to throw that out there completely without facts, but I remember reading about that case, and it's really sad, because I can understand from a certain point of view the police have a job to do, but if you put yourself in that situation where you create danger not only for yourselves but your fellow officers and then the citizens that you're trying to protect and serve, I think it's a really good thing that maybe they're getting rid of that, because we can't leave room for error when it's a life or death situation.
Yeah, I think I agree, because it's such a volatile situation when you do a no-knock, and that's for both parties. Say you do get the right house and they're just really violent criminals in that house. Well, then you're putting your officers in a huge amount of danger, the ones that are making the raid. So in the end, it just, as many of that I've seen that have happened in Texas that have turned violent almost instantly, it seems pointless. Like, why are we putting police and civilians in that kind of danger? What are we benefiting from that we need it that much when all these people are dying from it?
Mm-hmm.
I think what we're seeing right now too is people weaponizing social media in a positive way. People are very, very much utilizing social media to almost bully, again, our judicial system that I was just ragging on a few minutes ago, into opening up these cases. I mean, there was nothing happening with Breonna Taylor's case until very recently. And now the FBI is getting involved and trying to investigate it, and hopefully doing so in good faith. But also people are posting on Twitter and asking for retweets to promote old cases. I mean, they're trying to get Tamir Rice's case reopened. They're trying to get a lot of cases, and almost all of them, either violence or death against young African Americans, trying to get these cases reopened. And I think that's a good thing. I mean, this is, for lack of a better term, bullying works. Bully our elected officials, people in our judicial system, to trying to find justice for these people. These families have been affected irreparably, and no verdict now is going to bring back their loved ones, but at least they can sleep at night having gotten justice for Breonna's family. It was her birthday the other day, and I think it was on her birthday that they announced that the case was being investigated, or either right around there. So I mean, that was a great birthday present, I guess, for her family, to at least see that this isn't going by the wayside, that she's not going to die in vain. So obviously none of this is positive. These people would all love to still have their lives, but the fact that social media is banding together now to try and create some positive change, to try and get these cases reopened, I think that's an awesome thing.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, I've seen a lot of ugliness over the last couple weeks on social media, and it's been really frustrating because you feel like you have to be careful with your words because you don't want to offend somebody. And you shouldn't always have to, you really shouldn't have to feel that way at all. I mean, you should feel open to express yourself and not feel ridiculed for saying something. And I'm just really happy that people using social media as a platform for change, and they're actually getting the change that they want, instead of, pointing fingers at people, the wrong people, in fact, and saying, like, you're part of the problem, you are doing this wrong. I mean, try to educate people. I mean, like myself, I felt like I was pretty compassionate towards people of color, but, I always felt like there's always something that I could do better. Whatever it is, maybe understanding what the Black and African American community goes through on a daily basis, because I don't know. I mean, I know what it's like to live as a woman, and I know the struggles that women go through, but I don't know what a different race goes through, and especially different races who immigrate here and don't know our country. I mean, I can always do better to be compassionate towards other races, other ethnicities, other cultures. And, I encourage people to learn more about culture because, in doing so, you learn so much about why people why people act the way that they do. And it's not just psychology, and it's not just sociology, because culture also takes a huge role in that. Because some cultures have so many rules that that's why they do some of the things that they do, and that's why they act the way that they act. And, I'm just glad that there is some positivity in social media and how people are acting, and whether it's signing a petition, whether it's promoting some sort of organization that you can donate to, whether it's, I think if you sign up for the NAACP organization's email, they also give you the option to send a message to your local congressmen and women about promoting change. So if you can't donate money because I know times are tough with the coronavirus. At the very least, you can try to do that. Send a message to your local congressman, because even if yelling at someone on Facebook or Twitter doesn't feel like you're doing enough, or trying to spread some good news, the very least you can do is promote organizations that can help change.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, yeah. Just encouraging that open dialogue to see each other's perspectives on you know, on different sides, because you know, it's an important time, especially, you know, with the elections and coming up, and I don't just mean from like the executive branch. I mean at all levels of government. I also think that we need to focus on that as far as what we want to do to make changes. It's not just about donating, protesting, and, you know, retweeting or putting stuff on your social media. It's also about making sure that you vote at all the appropriate levels, do your research, and become better educated. I mean, I've learned much more right now with everything going on than I have in the last few years. And you know, like you said, Gabby, that it's, you know, it's, you can be from one perspective, but, you know, everybody has different experiences. And I think it's important to keep that dialogue open so we can, you know, learn about other people's cultures, their socioeconomic status, and all this stuff. Because, you know, I think that with all the vitriol being thrown around, it's better for us to just keep our ears open and our hearts open, so that we can learn about other perspectives and all that stuff. And I say this too because I have friends, close friends who are cops, who, you know, also agree with what's going on right now as far as holding, you know, other bad cops accountable and stuff. So I don't want that message to get lost, that just being for something doesn't mean you're against other things too.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely. And yeah, going off of the voting thing, I mean, if you live in a city where you are uncomfortable with the way your police department functions, or if you're uncomfortable with just anything in your city where you feel like your congressman, your mayor, your governor, whoever, you feel like they're not running your state or your city well enough, do the proper research. And you don't always have to stay allegiant to party lines. If you feel like your elected officials are not doing the proper job and you aren't feeling comfortable, then it's okay to vote otherwise. You know, stay educated on what their politics are and what their policies are and what they advocate for, because that's what's important. I've lived in a city where they kept electing the same officials and nothing got done. And I feel like my friends and family from Chicago can definitely agree with that, because we just have the same career politicians running in office where we just don't feel like things are getting done, and we have the same rat race every single day. And, you know, you as a voter and as an educated person, you can definitely make a lot of change by doing so.
Yeah, I don't normally vote in the smaller elections, just because I literally forget to a lot of times, which is really stupid. And so I made sure to change my address when I moved from one county to another, because I want to vote in this next one for the county I live in, specifically to remove certain people who are toxic to our little county we have here. And, you know, when they say go out and vote, you know, exercise your right to vote, it's for reasons like that, to make your city or your county or whatever better, our country. You know, there are a lot of politicians out there, I feel like, don't give any, you know what I'm saying, about us, and it sucks. And so, you know, we just got to do our part to try to get those people out of here.
Mm-hmm. I definitely agree.
Amen.
All right, so let's move on from that, and let's move on to some other interesting news that we learned. I think this was also on Wednesday. In the Madeleine McCann case, we mentioned this in our missing children missing persons episode. She was a little girl who's been missing since 2007. There is a new suspect in this case. He is a man from Germany who was at the time living in the same city in Portugal that the McCann family was vacationing in. And some people were led to believe that he was just kind of like a career criminal, where he was seen breaking into some of the apartments that the McCann family was vacationing in Portugal. And there isn't a whole lot of news besides that. But later in the week, German prosecutors were speaking about this new suspect, and they now used dialogue to believe that Madeline is dead. Although I alluded to this in that podcast, in that episode, personally, I think that Mom and Dad did something fishy to her. Whether she's dead or not, I don't think it's a happy ending for her case necessarily, but I like the fact that they have a new suspect and they're trying to keep this case open in hopes that maybe they can find someone, whether it's the parents or somebody else. I thought it was great news that they are still trying to investigate to find somebody.
Yeah, same here. When you sent that in the group, because, I was on that episode with you for the kidnappings, I was like, yes, finally, like, they've got a new suspect. Maybe they can, maybe he didn't do it, but he saw something, being that he was around those apartments a lot. So it's just the opportunity to get more information to hopefully be able to close that case, even if it does end up that she's dead, to get justice for her if she is. So it's always great to see new leads and new suspects, especially ones that, when's the last time they had a suspect or a lead in that case?
I think it was 2008. They investigated the parents and they couldn't find anything. And essentially it was kind of like a cold case in a way. They just kind of left it open for anybody or anything to give them some information.
That's a pretty long time.
Yeah, it's been 12 years since they've had anything.
Yeah, it's crazy. I was looking at the article, the latest, I think it was like 1 or 2 days ago, because I don't remember what I did 1 or 2 days ago. And it looks like they linked, her case with, I think it was 1 or 2 more cases of other missing children, and the suspect they're looking at is, actually, I think he was serving time for brutal rape or something. So I don't know much about her case. I didn't really, look into it that much until you guys mentioned it. But when I read the article, I'm just, I'm hopeful that despite, obviously the odds really being against this family, I just hope that they can get some sort of closure about what happened to their daughter. I can't imagine being in a spot where you just don't know what happened to them. I think that's the worst part of it all, just not knowing. Because at least if you know whether it's a good outcome or a bad outcome, you can get that closure to sort of move on. And it looked like, since there's 2 or 3 other cases, 1 or 2, how many other cases this guy has been linked to? Hopefully they can get closure for those families as well. I think he was like a pedophile.
Yeah.
So, it's just a real, at least the closure part is the one thing that I hope they get.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think Mitch kind of took the words right out of my mouth there. I think at this point for the family, it has to just be about closure. I mean, while you always like to be hopeful, I think they've probably resigned themselves to the fact that their daughter is dead. I mean, she'd be about 17 now, 16 or 17, unless she's being, held in a basement with no, access to the outside world. Like if she was just taken and she'd probably see her face somewhere if she had access to social media. Like there'd be some sort of sighting of her. So unless her appearance has been just like completely changed, or something extreme has happened. I think that more than likely the result is that she died, and I would be willing to bet, based on the MO for people who abduct children like this, she probably died fairly early into after she was taken. I'd be shocked if she was alive more than a few months. But like Mitch said, I think it's more about the family. I think they'd like to know who did it, see him answer for this crime. I mean, he has ruined their lives forever. I mean, they had their child ripped away from them. That I hope that no one has to experience that, but I feel like that would have to be worse than burying a child, because you can't even bury the body. You just, one day your child was gone. So, I mean, I think it is about trying to get some sort of closure on their part, and see, whoever took their daughter to see him answer for this crime.
I agree. And this is a little unrelated, but it's related to our episode on missing children. Haley mentioned briefly about a silver alert, and silver alerts are used for elderly people who go missing. And I guess in Ohio, they issued a silver alert for like a 15-year-old girl, which was odd, because
that's really weird. As a dispatcher, I've had to put in a silver alert, and it's always been elderly, but not just the elderly with a cognitive disorder. They have to have they have to have a doctor diagnose them with a cognitive disability to even get a silver alert. And there is an alert for kids that have cognitive disabilities that's not silver. So that's really confusing, I guess, to me.
I didn't read the article, so I was like, maybe she had a disability. But I just thought it was odd that they issued a silver alert rather than an amber alert for her.
Yeah, I mean, being 15, they probably should have done an amber alert. That's really weird.
Well, as we learned, Ohio was second behind Texas for the most amber alert. So I wasn't surprised it was Ohio, but just the fact that it was a silver alert was just interesting.
Yeah, kind of want to look it up now.
So moving on to the next true crime news that we learned this week. This was actually news carried on from the previous week. Some YouTube woman who I have no idea who she is. Her name is Mika Stauffer. I don't know how much YouTube you guys watch. Do you know who she is? Have you heard of her before?
No, I don't watch YouTube that much anymore, because just like Facebook, the comments are toxic. So, and I don't know who that is though.
No, I don't know who she is. Yeah, Jake Paul can suck a bag of dicks. Fuck that guy. Well, I guess a couple weeks ago, she rehomed her autistic son. She previously adopted him. I think he was originally from China, and I think he was like 3 or 4 years old, and she decided to rehome him, which I found incredibly offensive originally before finding out that her son is autistic. Why do you rehome a child like they're a dog? You have
that makes no sense.
Yeah, you have the responsibility as a parent. Why can't you take care of them? And you adopted him. You took on the responsibility to adopt him, so now you're going to rehome him because of whatever reason. And the fact that he's autistic, which I found incredibly offensive, because I work with quite a few autistic kids on the spectrum, and I understand that they are a lot of work. And they can be very challenging, especially when they don't have high-functioning autism. They have a lot of cooperation issues, amongst other things. So I can only imagine as a parent of an autistic child, it's a lot more challenging. Just, as my experience with working with them, it's challenging. But I don't think that is a reason to quote unquote rehome him because it's too much for you. I thought that was incredibly offensive. Like, what the fuck, bitch?
Yeah, for real. Real quick, I'm going to jump back to the other one because I Googled something, and it looks like just a year ago, they kind of updated silver alerts to be allowed to include endangered children. So it looks like they can use amber or silver for kids. I feel like most people know amber, though, so I would still suggest using that. But anyways, I didn't know that. It's been a while since I've been a dispatcher.
Either.
But on the rehoming, that is for animals. When you hear the term rehome, that's people rehoming animals, which still kind of irritates me a little bit, even with animals, but more so for a child, because why did you even take this child into your home? Like, to then move it out because it was too hard or you didn't want to do it anymore? Like, I mean, hopefully this child gets a better home and a more loving family. And in the end, it is a more positive thing for them because they'll have somebody who actually loves them. But that is just the stupidest thing I've ever heard, honestly. And like you said, it's offensive to people who have children with autism or other cognitive type disabilities.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse my ignorance, but I just had to look up what rehome means. I didn't know that was I didn't know that was a thing, much less with a person.
It's not with a person.
I mean, yeah, I was just like, what do you mean rehome? What is that like? Like, did she remodel her home? And then, honestly, it's so offensive. I can't even First of all, I think even just adopting a pet, I think
Yes.
people should do the correct, go through, looking what the needs are, whether you can actually, meet those needs financially, emotionally, everything. So if people, should take that amount of care into adopting a pet, I feel like they should take that type of care adopting a human being, regardless of whether they have, any, cognitive disorders or anything like that. But wow, that's just it's really disheartening because I don't know what these people thought they were doing, if they were adopting taking in a stray cat or something. That's so incredibly awful. It's so offensive. I feel terrible for this kid because you're telling them it's not good enough.
Yeah.
That's the message that you're sending out, and it's really sad that's the action they decided to take. I'm kind of in shock, honestly. Like, who adopts a kid that they know has special needs, and then the moment it gets too tough, they just decide to quote unquote rehome the child. It's disgusting on so many levels.
Can we rehome them? Can we send them to a different country?
That'd be nice.
I don't even know who they are. Before this even happened, I had no clue. And, she made a YouTube video explaining this, it was like it was okay. I don't even know what.
I don't understand people. I guess I don't, because seriously, what the fuck? And I don't know. It's also kind of heartbreaking for the people who can't have kids. And adoption is such a long and expensive process in general that for you to take a child potentially from another family that would have loved that child and not found the special needs to be too hard, you took that child away from another loving home potentially, and now you're just like, ooh, I don't want that anymore.
Yeah, this story really angers me, and I 3 minutes ago I didn't know who this woman was, but based on what we have learned in a short time here, so she's a YouTube influencer, her and her husband, and I already know the type based on that alone. So she and her husband have 4 other children. I'm not sure if they're all their biological children or if some of them have been adopted. But bottom line, they have used their children essentially as props since 2014 to build their YouTube channel, where they talk about parenting. And it sounds like they adopted a child with special needs again to use as a prop. This was something that they decided, okay, well, this is a thing that will get us views. And then when they saw that it was too difficult, they decide well, oh, we're not going to take care of this child anymore. I mean, there's a responsibility, like you said, Haley. There are so many people out there who can't have children, and you decide that this kid was crashing the style of your YouTube channel, and you have to find him a different home. I mean that's appalling.
I feel like the more I hear, the more mad I get. Like I'm just sitting here seething.
Besides,
yeah, it's awful.
There was more news that was revealed this week that allegedly that child is missing. I don't think it is as severe as an Amber Alert had to be issued. Whatever this bitch's name is, Mika, whatever, I don't even care. YouTube bitch is how I'm going to refer to her. She claimed that they found a family to adopt him, but I don't think they went through a formal agency where there was paperwork involved, where the authorities can track where he's at and track his well-being. Because, and then when I found that out, I'm like, you just find a family did you just put this on Facebook Marketplace? Craigslist, who wants to adopt my baby? You don't know how safe these people are. That's why they have adoption agencies, so they can vet families and find out whether they are suitable to take care of a child. And that's why the authorities want to know where he's at, because they didn't go through the proper paperwork to make sure that he's okay and he's with a family who's going to take care of him. So it's just
from the heels of that her autistic kid. Oh snap! Sorry.
It's okay. It sounds like this family is just very narcissistic.
Edit that out. I've got some trouble with my.
Technical difficulties with Mitch.
Always on this show.
Every time. It's okay.
Dang. We have the worst luck, man. Every other podcast, totally fine.
This behavior that they should look into taking their other 4 children away from them. I don't think that this is fit parents.
I can't believe this child is missing. Oh my gosh. What if this family did something horrible to him? We don't know. We don't even know where he is. I swear, every detail you give me, I'm just now if my face could show how angry I was, it would be bright red.
Well, I mean, think about it. The child had special needs. Could something have gone wrong with him one night? And an accident happened, and they invent some sort of phony story about, oh, it's not working out, let's rehome this child, and then it suddenly goes missing. I mean, something really stinks here, I would suspect those 2. I would bring them in for questioning.
Yeah.
Police department, listen to us. We're solving crimes on this podcast.
Yeah, someone do something to help this child. I mean, I understand autistic kids and people on the spectrum. They're not hopeless.
No. They're actually really smart.
Yes, autistic kids and autistic people, they are so smart. They are, especially things that they have a fascination for, they are so smart.
Mm-hmm.
It blows my mind that they're just gonna give up on this kid. Oh my god, I just want to kick her in the vag or something. I didn't know who she was, and now everyone hates her.
Don't subscribe to her YouTube channel. That's for the
unsubscribe if you're subscribed.
Yeah, unsubscribe.
Yeah. And I guess Kate Hudson's Fabletics dropped their endorsement from her, and My God. I
She's
hope,
been canceled.
yeah,
Good. Cancel her. And
Yeah.
then find this child.
yes. All right, shall we move on to some other
I need
interesting?
to like calm down first.
Have you guys watched Making a Murderer series?
Hmm.
A little bit. I really honestly haven't seen a lot. Sorry.
I think it was there a second season
Yes.
or something. I haven't seen that, but I did see the first season.
The second season's actually very interesting. They kind of take you through the appeals process that he's going through. And it's just only a fraction of the appeals process that he's trying to go through, because I know appeals, especially when you try to apply for an appeal, because he's just been doing that off and on since he's been in prison. But Stephen Avery, the subject of Making a Murderer, has coronavirus.
Hmm.
I guess inmates have been contracting COVID, and Stephen Avery is a victim of one. I don't know how severe it is, but I hope he's okay. I don't know, because the series still has me on the fence about him. I don't know if I feel confident in saying that he's guilty or feeling confident saying he's innocent. But I don't know if I hope he's okay. It's just strange.
I want to see
Schrodinger's
more.
corona. We hope that he's okay, but also not okay at the same time.
Yes.
Stay alive so you can see more and learn more.
Yes. Making a Murderer season 3, taking the journey of Stephen Avery's COVID case. And then for other fun news, one of our serial killers that we featured 2 episodes ago, I actually alluded to this, that I think John Wayne Gacy's home is still standing. In fact, it is. That has been proven. But in case you guys are looking for a house or you're looking to move to Chicago, you can, in fact, buy John Wayne Gacy's house, because it is for sale.
No thanks.
This is
I'm
the
good.
moment I've been waiting for. I've been saving up for this moment.
Yeah, I mean, if I could get it as a cheap investment rate, rent it out to some people who aren't very hyper aware, it could be good.
Could you imagine? You find out you're like renting a freaking serial killer's house.
I'm
Oops.
getting a good deal on this. Only like $400 a month in rent. I wonder why.
Just go to the bank and be like, "You're telling me I got a 0.5 rate on my loan for this house? Who lived here?"
I know you guys asked the question of whether the fact the house still smells. I don't know. I don't know if it's been remodeled. I don't know if they left
How
it.
long has it been since the dead bodies were in it?
Yeah, I don't know any of that.
Because it would depend on that, and then if it was cleaned.
Yeah.
'Cause a smell can linger, as we've talked about. It can get onto the inside of the walls.
Yeah.
So,
And with how many bodies he had stored in his
yeah.
place, you feel like they have to like strip the whole inside or maybe even the whole house itself, but it looks like it's the same as it always has been. And his childhood home is still standing. I don't know.
I'm surprised they didn't turn it into like a little thing to get money, to have people walk through it and like pay money and the city gets the money. I'm surprised they're just allowing it to be sold, I guess. I just think it's a little weird.
Yeah. Sell that to like someone who wants to make it a museum or some sort of
make some money off of it.
The Jane Addams Hull House is still standing, and they use that as a museum. You can walk through it, and yeah, that's in Chicago too. So if anyone wants a little history, go to the Hull House. It's actually pretty cool. I've gone to see it because it's on my alma mater's campus. So
It's pretty cool.
Yeah, but John Wayne Gacy's home is for sale. I don't know if anyone wants to live there, but
Listen to our episode about it first before you make your decision if you want to buy it.
yes, don't just buy it on just the namesake, because you need to get the information beforehand in case there is a smell. Because don't move in and just say, why does this house have a weird odor? It smells like something is here, but I don't know what it is.
It smells really dirty.
It smells like 20-year-old trash that's been hanging in the crawl space in the wall.
That's disgusting.
Not quite the same as George Costanza saying, this was John Voight's car. This was John Wayne Gacy's house.
Yeah, no, definitely not. Well, that was all of the news that happened this past week. I can only imagine what next week has in store for us, because that was a lot.
Yeah,
absolutely. It's 2020 for you.
Yeah, true.
It's only June, and I feel like it's been 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So let's move on to what we came here to talk about, because we're still talking about serial killers in our little mini series, The Killing Season. So let's talk about some serial killers that we don't know who they are and they still remain unsolved. And we're going to start off with the Zodiac Killer, also known as Zodiac. Have you guys seen the movie with Jake Gyllenhaal?
Yes, very good movie.
It was very good.
I have not, unfortunately.
It was amazing, yeah.
RDJ, Mark Ruffalo, very good cast.
Yeah.
I'll have to watch it.
Yeah, I think you'll thoroughly enjoy it. But, Hollywood puts their little Hollywood spin on it, so a little dramatic, but still very good nonetheless. So let's start off the very beginning. Between 1968 and 1969, Zodiac murdered at least 5 people in Northern California. However, he claimed to have murdered 37 victims. Do we believe the 37 victims thing, or do we think it's like way more than 37?
I tend to believe it, only because these people are super narcissistic typically. Like they definitely keep track, and if it was higher, he definitely wouldn't claim that it was fewer. Could he be elevating the total a little bit? Maybe, but I have a feeling it's unfortunately probably right on that figure. These people are definitely full of themselves. They love to taunt the people who are trying to catch them, and unfortunately, I'd say that 37 kills total is probably accurate.
Yeah, I have a hard time believing or not believing certain numbers, because if you've heard of The Confession Killer, which is also on Netflix, spent some time here in Williamson County. I've actually been inside of his jail cell, so that was kind of cool. But he was called the Confession Killer because he admitted to doing all these murders, and then it was found out that he wasn't the killer in quite a bit of them. So he was trying to take credit for ones that weren't his because he wanted more numbers and a higher body count.
Okay. So could be less than 37.
Could be.
Mitch, what do you think?
I mean, honestly, it could be either one. I tend to think that, like Mark said, these guys, a common trait among these types of killers tends to be the narcissistic trait, where they're kind of like in love with their work. That's why they keep mementos and all that stuff from the crime scenes. So I think that, definitely if there were more, I think especially someone like this who likes to taunt police and likes to sort of, to get all that attention, I think that if they had a higher body count, they would be more than happy to divulge that. I think that they think that it would get them even more notoriety in the media, but that's just me.
Okay. So moving on. On August 1st, 1969, the San Francisco Examiner, the San Francisco Chronicle, and the Viejo Times Herald each received handwritten letters in an envelope without a return address. The letter stated, "Dear editor, I am the killer of the 2 teenagers last Christmas at Lake Herman." Zodiac threatened more attacks if the letters weren't printed on the front page of newspapers. Each letter consisted of a circle with a cross through it and contained one part of a 3-part cipher that Zodiac claimed contained his identity. When I was doing my research, I feel like maybe Zodiac's behaviors could have influenced the BTK killer and how he just taunted the local media, because if you guys remember from that episode, BTK also sent letters to his local news station and the local newspaper saying, I did this, come catch me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Could very well be the case. I mean, these people, I feel like they don't want to be caught, but they want like the thrill of knowing that they could be like giving clues to themselves. Like it's a game to them. It really is. It's a game, which is unfortunate because obviously they are taking people's lives while doing so. But yeah, that's how sick these people are. It's all a game to them.
Yeah, they want their name in the newspaper. They want their name on the news. When with the BTK, when he stopped seeing his name is when he sent letters and stuff like, "Hey, don't forget about me. I'm still here."
Mm-hmm.
Weird.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think the Zodiac killer happened around the same time as BTK, even though he got captured in 2004. He was making some murders around the 60s and 70s and even the 80s. I think I remember correctly, the 90s as well. But I mean, with how notorious and infamous Zodiac is, maybe he could have had some sort of influence on how he toyed with the police.
Oh yeah, I mean, a lot of these guys inspire copycats. Whether it's people trying to claim that they are the original killer, or just a fan of their work, and that sometimes they'll definitely copy like certain methods too. Yeah, these kind of whack jobs attract other whack jobs.
Yes, and as we learned, BTK was quite the whack job. When I watched Mindhunter and I got to the part in the second season where they featured BTK and how he was in the bathroom all tied up with the female mask, it's just like, oh, yeah. What a weirdo.
Yes. Majorly.
Yes. All right, so moving on. Shortly after his first letter, Zodiac sent another letter to the San Francisco Examiner that read, "Dear editor, this is the Zodiac speaking," and described his murders in much more detail and taunted the police for not cracking his code or catching him. Several days later, a high school teacher named Donald Hardin and his wife solved the cipher. But if you guys remember, he sent several ciphers that he said would reveal his identity. So I think they only solved one, not all of them. However, the one that they solved read, "I like killing people because it is so much fun. It is more fun than killing wild game in the forest because man is the most dangerous animal of all." And this is the only, and still remains the only, one of the 4 ciphers that has been solved. What are your guys' thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, he's not wrong that man is the most dangerous, but like creepy to be, I love to murder people. That's what I do for fun. Like, okay, cool. Why is it 2020 and we still haven't deciphered the other ones though? Like, or do we need to get once again, do we need to get the Don't Fuck with Cats people in on this because they seem very dedicated to research?
Yeah. Did you guys see that little docu-series, Don't Fuck with Cats?
Yes, that was something.
Yep.
They went into such great detail. They would zoom in on his vacuum.
Yes.
Where the vacuum was made to help find out where he may live Like, why can't they just try to?
I don't have time for that. Okay. I don't know how they have time for that. I don't have time for that. But let's send them the stuff to decipher and see if they can do it.
Yeah, they got this.
It makes me wonder about this guy's intelligence level, because I mean, if we still can't solve his ciphers, it's either one or two things. Either he was just too smart to the point where no one can solve his cipher, or there really was never the answer in the ciphers. Maybe he did that deliberately. But it really makes me wonder just how smart this guy was, because to be able to not just get away with the murders, but to taunt police by saying, hey, here's my information in these puzzles, basically. If you solve them, you win. And like you said, if we can track down people using just images and file names and videos, especially really not that great quality videos from what I saw in the documentary, it makes me wonder just how good this guy was. I think I remember seeing too that there were some kind of misspellings in one of the ciphers. So I don't know if that was deliberate or if, I don't know, but it's kind of an interesting thing because intelligence seems to kind of be a way to measure how these guys are effective, and most of the time they've gotten caught, at least the famous ones. I don't know about what's going on now with current serial killers, but this guy seems to be, I feel like I'm turning into a fangirl. No, I'm not. I'm just saying it's really interesting that he evaded arrest all these years while giving supposedly the cops the answer.
Yeah.
Yeah, that kind of makes me think similar to what you were saying, Mitch. I have a feeling that the answer wasn't actually contained in all those ciphers, because unless this guy's like just the smartest person alive, he would have made it at least somewhat solvable. It could be that he was deliberately misleading, even in those ciphers, because again, it's a game. I think killing was a game for him, and I think also it could have been the fact that trying to toy with people who were chasing him was also a game. Lead them down the wrong path, make them think that they're onto something, and really they're coming up cold. So all these people are very intelligent, I feel like, in a sick way, but still like very intelligent. I don't think that you can get away with one murder, much less several, if you're not very intelligent. I mean, look at Aaron Hernandez. The guy was leaving clues left and right. So I mean, to get away with something for that amount of time, I feel like you need to be very good at covering your tracks. You need to be very good at deceiving people. So I have a feeling that most likely it was what Mitch was saying, that this guy was deliberately giving them puzzles to solve that wasn't actually giving them anything.
Yeah, I agree that most of them are probably pretty intelligent, because not only do they get away with it for 10, 20 something years, but a lot of them had families and were members of their churches and had full-time jobs. And you're like, well, first off, having a full-time job, where did you find the time to go out and commit these and hide them and all that? But for them to like live this double life and be able to hide evidence and all that, like there has to be some sort of intelligence level in that.
Yes. And it gets weirder it continues to get weirder as the story progresses. So in 1969, 3 days after Zodiac murdered taxi driver Paul Stine, the San Francisco Chronicle received a letter claiming that he did the crime. The letter contained details of the crime as well as a bloody scrap of Stine's shirt. At the end of the letter, Zodiac said that he would next shoot out a tire of a school bus and, quote unquote, pick the kiddies as they come bouncing out. So I don't know if he actually murdered any children. That might be bigger news if he planned and actually carried out an attack of a whole school bus full of children. That could have just been something that he wanted to use to fuck with the police's heads. But when I was reading about the bloody shirt, how can you extract DNA from that besides the victim?
You could try. So it's really hard, especially if they were mixed, but I just know where we're at now. You probably could if he touched it without gloves, if his, sweated on, like his sweat dropped on it, if he had his own blood drop in it. I know with the CODIS system where the blood goes in, if it's more than, I think, 3, it can't even be put into CODIS. We had, a piece of evidence that had 3 to 4 DNA profiles in it, and so they won't even put it into the system because it's just too many. So there's so many factors that go into it, and depending on the time period, they might not have had the ability to do that back then.
Mm-hmm.
DNA evidence at that time was pretty much unheard of, right? I think it wasn't until around the time of the O.J. Simpson trial that DNA evidence was gaining more and more steam in these cases.
I believe so.
Yeah, and I mean, depending on if they kept that piece of evidence, they probably could have attempted to reanalyze it once DNA became a thing, So I don't know if that's something that they still had locked away somewhere. Who knows? There's so many little details with DNA and the labs. I feel like they're very strict on what they will test and what they can get off of it, and for it to even go into the system, it can be kind of frustrating on like my side because I don't understand, why they won't take certain things.
Okay. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to have a little comment and just say that CSI TV shows really have ruined my expectations of what CSI can do or cannot do.
Yes.
But I appreciate Haley's input on this. I don't think I've ever said it before, but it's kind of good to have someone in that field doing these podcasts because I feel like CSI has kind of really warped our expectations of what we can get from crime scene investigations and like the science part of it. But yeah, just want to make that little comment.
Yeah, we actually call it the CSI effect in court, because it kind of does give a little bit of a bias that people think that we can do more than we can. And when we go to schools and we do presentations, that's actually the first thing that my boss and I talk about is, okay, who watches CSI? Who believes it's real? We can't get DNA off a blade of grass. We can't just put it into our computer and immediately get a match. I mean, you're looking at a few years for some of this evidence to even be analyzed. And then, say you have a burglary in Texas, the statute of limitations is only 5 years. So if you don't get a suspect in those 5 years, you just can't prosecute anybody after that. But that evidence isn't even being touched for 2 years at least. So then you only have 3 years to find somebody. So people don't understand like the length of time and the amount of stuff that you can actually get. What you're talking about, Gabby, would be called trace evidence. So just the fact that he touched it, getting skin cells on it would be trace. And a lot of labs won't even take trace evidence nowadays.
Okay.
So
Wow.
it's just so many rules and it is so hard to honestly get convictions. And when you get those CODIS hits, which is DNA, or AFIS, which is fingerprints, you just get so excited because you're like, yes, got somebody, got that hit. We just got a CODIS hit the other day off a case, and you're just like, yes, winning, got one.
Well, no one's winning in this case because
no,
still unsolved.
Right. No winning.
So continuing on the Stein murder. So after the murder, Zodiac continued to send more letters to Bay Area papers claiming to have committed more murders, more ciphers, and continued to mock the police for their inability to find him. However, in 1974, the letters stopped, but the investigation has not. In 2004, the case was marked inactive, but they reopened it in March of 2007. They do have lots of suspects, but they only had one that they felt they got some information from, but obviously, as we know, he was not found to be the Zodiac killer because He was just a suspect, and there's no name there's no face to the name. So one suspect, his name is Arthur Lee Allen, a true crime author and former San Francisco Chronicle cartoonist. Robert Graysmith wrote 2 books about Zodiac, untimely identifying a man named Arthur Lee Allen as the most likely suspect. On October 6, 1969, Allen was investigated because he reported to be in the vicinity of the Lake Berryessa attack against 2 of the Zodiac victims. However, Allen claimed that he was scuba diving at the time of the attacks. Anybody have any thoughts on that, or shall I keep going?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know a whole lot about the suspects. I think one of my coworkers, when I was talking about this episode, said that there was one where the son said his dad could have been the Zodiac killer. I don't know if it was this one or if it was a different name, because I just don't know that much about it. But interesting that he would think it's so true. He'd write like 2 books on it. So.
Yeah.
I think that I hope that there's a little bit more information, because I think just because he was scuba diving in the same area, that wouldn't really hold up in court anyways. So I wonder what else they found that would have pointed him to be such as opposed to just a regular suspect to likely suspect.
Oh, there's more. So in 1971, Allen was investigated again when his friend reported to the Manhattan Beach Police that Allen expressed his desire to kill people, use the name Zodiac, and secure a flashlight to a firearm for night vision. In March of 1968, Allen was fired from his job as an elementary school teacher for allegations of sexual misconduct with students. Gross.
Ew.
However, he was well regarded by those who knew him, but some described him as being fixated on young children and angry at women. Again,
angry at women. Was it mommy issues again? What he was angry at women for? Was this the copycat? Wasn't there a Zodiac copycat that was caught?
I don't remember.
I think there was a copycat, and then that one was caught, but the original was never caught, I believe. Maybe not this guy, but maybe a different one.
There may have been a Jack the Ripper copycat as we were trying to find a third unsolved crime. Maybe it was Jack the Stripper trying to copycat.
Jack the Stripper?
Yes.
Okay.
Unsolved case called Jack the Stripper.
So it was a New York Zodiac killer.
Oh.
Herberto, I don't know how to say that. Seda, American serial killer who struck New York City from 1990 to 93. And apparently was like just a copycat.
Okay.
Zodiac killer. I think that's the one I had heard about, at least. There might be more than one.
But not as smart and deceiving, because clearly they caught him.
Got caught.
Yeah. So moving on with more information. In September of 1972, San Francisco police obtained a search warrant for Allen's home. In 1974, Allen was arrested for committing lewd acts upon a 12-year-old boy, and he pled guilty and served 2 years in prison. Like,
Two?
I don't.
Our judicial system, Mark. Come on.
Yeah. Even back then.
Yeah. Well,
more so back then.
Yes. In February 1991, Viejo police obtained another search warrant in Allen's home. So obviously he was released from prison because we know he had a 2-year sentence. So they had another search warrant. I didn't find anything on what this warrant was for, what they found, anything like that. But in 1992, 2 days after Allen's death, Viejo police served another warrant and seized property from Allen's home. In 2002, San Francisco Police Department developed a partial DNA profile from the saliva on stamps and envelopes of Zodiac's letters. San Francisco police compared this partial DNA to the DNA of Arthur Lee Allen. A DNA comparison was made with DNA of Allen's close friend, the one who routed him to the police. Neither test result indicated a match, and Allen and Cheney were excluded as contributors of the DNA. Retired police handwriting expert. Do you guys have a handwriting expert at your police department?
Not at the police department, but we have is like the Department of Public Safety has a bunch of stuff like that we, facial recognition, stuff like that we can't do at our small department. We can send to the lab and have them do it over there.
Okay. So a retired handwriting expert, Lloyd Cunningham, said that Allen's handwriting didn't even come close to the Zodiac's, nor did DNA extracted from the envelope sent by Zodiac come close to being Allen. So that kind of closes the case on Allen being the Zodiac. There were other suspects. Some people believe that Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber, was once a suspect, but nothing came of that. And then more recently, I don't think this is true, but some people believe that Ted Cruz was.
My husband makes that joke all the time. Oh my goodness. I told him we were doing the Zodiac Killer for this, and he goes, "It's Ted Cruz. I don't know what else you need." Okay.
Yeah, I mean, everybody knows it's Ted Cruz. Come on. Like, Haley, can't you guys do something?
I don't even know. I mean, I haven't looked into why they think it is. I just find it funny that that's always what people jump to now.
I think he looks like the Zodiac Killer, but when I was examining the composite sketch of the Zodiac and Ted Cruz, they don't really look alike.
So the one I was telling you about earlier that my coworker told me about was his name is Gary Stewart, and he's like convinced his biological father is the Zodiac Killer. It looks like it was The Most Dangerous Animal of All was a true crime documentary on it, and he believes his biological father is the Zodiac because I just looked it up a little bit ago. The handwriting was really similar. His mugshot is almost like, I mean, it really is almost identical. It's pretty close. And they both enjoyed ciphers and also both had an obsession with school buses. So maybe this guy is on to something, but apparently they don't think the points are solid enough to reopen it basically, or to make him a suspect.
Interesting. That is very interesting.
That's very forthcoming.
Yeah. I think it's my dad, and here's why. But I don't think he lived with his dad, or like it just says biological father. It doesn't say like he grew up with him or anything, at least in this article.
Okay. So maybe it's not Ted Cruz.
I still think it is, but okay.
Maybe this Gary Stewart guy, it says, some of the filmmakers thought he maybe fabricated some information, so you just never know anymore.
Maybe Ted Cruz is an alias, and his name is actually Gary Stewart.
Oh my gosh. Who knows?
Well, moving on. The Zodiac is also suspected of being the monster of Florence. So I guess there was more killings in similar fashion to what the Zodiac does, but obviously they could not crack that case. On February 19th, 2011, America's Most Wanted featured a story about Zodiac. So that's interesting. In 2018, Viejo Police Department attempted to collect DNA from the back of stamps that the Zodiac used to mail his letter. They hoped that they could catch the Zodiac in a similar fashion to how the Golden State Killer was captured. In May 2018, Viejo Police Department expected results in several weeks, but no results were reported as of December 2019. And this case remains unsolved to this day. Do you guys think that it's possible that he could just be dead? And that's
it's very possible.
That's what I've been thinking for years now. He's probably just not alive anymore.
He had to be, at the very youngest, he'd have to be like 70 or his early 70s. If he was committing murders like say he was doing it in his late teens or early 20s, then he'd be like in his early 70s right now. So if he was a little bit older, then yeah, like he'd be like in his 80s, or it's very possible that he could just be dead. And the fact that that there no more letters came, it's entirely possible that maybe he died shortly after that. Maybe they were investigating who he was for 20 some odd years, and he was dead the whole time. It's possible.
It's likely he didn't lose his fascination for murder. So, I mean, at the point that the murder stopped, that could have been when he died. You know, I think he would have just stopped.
Very possible.
I would agree with the same with that. I mean, and there's also the possibility of thinking that, you know, these types of individuals who kill like this tend to engage in risky behavior. Even outside of murder. So it's possible that, you know, he could have died prematurely too, from who knows what, because I mean, we've seen these types of individuals engage in like either promiscuous behavior, drug behavior, alcohol, you know, all this stuff that could have contributed to him dying early on. So yeah, I think he's probably dead, or he's Ted Cruz. Most likely Ted Cruz.
Okay. So let's move on to our other unsolved case, Jack the Ripper, not to be confused with Jack the Stripper.
Could be both. We don't know. It could be both.
Because both are unsolved, so it could very well be both. We don't know. But we're going to go back in time to the 1800s. It was kind of a little difficult to refrain from making grammatical errors because I'm so used to typing out dates in the 1900s. So going back and typing dates from the 1800s, I was trying to refrain from typing like 1988. But this actually happened in 1888. But to give a little bit of a background on where he would commit these murders. So in the mid-19th century, Britain experienced an influx of Irish immigrants who swelled the populations of major cities, including East End of London. From 1882, Jewish refugees fleeing from Tsarist Russia and other parts of Eastern Europe immigrated to the same area. The parish of Whitechapel in London's East End became overcrowded, with the population increasing to about 80,000 by 1888. And it doesn't seem like Whitechapel's a very big town, so it sounds like 80,000 is a gigantic amount of people. And it seems like it could have been a little easy to get away with these types of murders. Police noticed that a large number of attacks against women in the East End during this time adds uncertainty to how many victims were murdered by the same individual. 11 separate murders stretching from April 3rd, 1888 to February 13th, 1891 were included in an investigation and collectively known as the Whitechapel murders. People were unsure whether these murders were linked to the same culprit, but 5 of the 11 Whitechapel murders, known as the Canonical Five, are widely believed to be the work of Jack the Ripper. Jack the Ripper's murders typically involve female prostitutes who lived and worked in the slums of London's East End. London's police department estimated that there were 62 brothels and 1,200 women working as prostitutes in Whitechapel. You gotta make that money somehow.
True.
The females who were murdered had their throats cut prior to abdominal mutilations. The removal of internal organs from at least 3 of the victims led proposals that their killer had some anatomical or surgical knowledge. Very interesting. Do you guys have any thoughts on this so far? I threw a lot of information at once.
I'm hanging in there.
Yeah. I'm ready for more information.
From August 7th to September 10th, 1888, all 5 killings attributed to Jack the Ripper took place within a mile of each other in or around the Whitechapel district. The series of killings that began in August 1888 stood out from other violent crimes because they were marked sadistic butchery that they suggested a mind more sociopathic and hateful than most citizens could comprehend. Allegedly, Jack the Ripper did more than just snuff out life with a knife, as he mutilated and disemboweled women as he removed kidneys and uteruses.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did we also have mommy issues?
Yeah, because, with what we all discussed in the last episode, very possible.
Like you're cutting out the uterus, which gives birth, gives life.
Yes.
Makes you a mom, if you choose to have kids or if you can. So I don't know. It's just weird.
Yeah, that's a particularly gruesome aspect of his murder that seems to single out women. I mean, that's
right.
like you said, Haley, it's a lot of cultures, it's kind of like the pinnacle of being a woman, your uterus. It
right.
allows you to give life. I wonder what his mom did. Yeah. I'm not blaming her, but I'm just, Jesus Christ, did she spank him a little too hard? I don't know.
A lot of times too in these cases, it's not always mommy issues, but like the guy is impotent, like he not women aren't really into him. Maybe like sometimes that leads to some sexual frustration that then leads to him deciding to be violent. So that's always a factor too. At least I've learned that in Criminal Minds.
True. Very true.
Criminal Minds 101. Move over, CSI.
All right. So during the time of the murders, Jack the Ripper sent several letters. That's why I thought maybe Jack the Ripper may have influenced the way the Zodiac Killer toyed with authorities, because Jack the Ripper did the same. So he sent several letters to the London Metropolitan Police Service taunting officers about his gruesome murders and future murders. The letters that were sent included his infamous Dear Boss letter, the saucy Jackie postcard, the From Hell letter, and the Openshaw letter. Because so many hoax letters were received by the London Metro Police, it was very difficult to decipher if these letters were actually sent by Jack the Ripper. So, I mean, it seems to me like Jack the Ripper probably maybe the original serial killer who would love to send letters depicting and describing his murders. Definitely influenced a lot of copycats, including the Zodiac and possibly BTK.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. I know there's been specifically copycats even 120 years after those crimes. There's been people who are like, well, I was influenced by Jack the Ripper. So it wouldn't be surprising if, the Zodiac or BTK were inspired, I guess. This kind of seems like a really weird word to use when you're talking about murderers, but I mean, they probably are like, okay, well, Jack the Ripper wasn't caught, so I should probably do some of the same things he did so I don't get caught.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they also too probably like it's a narcissistic tendency, like oh, well, this guy wasn't caught and he did this way, like, well, I want to do it better. I want to be better than this guy. So like, be better at his own game than Jack the Ripper. Yeah, like again, that's how these people's minds work. Like they definitely want. There's a lot of vanity. There's a lot of narcissistic tendencies. It's I'm sure it's a lot of fun up in their brains.
I was looking at the From Hell letter because I think that's the one that supposedly seems to be the one that draws the more of a consensus that that's like an original letter from the killings. And I wonder if, because like you said, he had to have had some anatomical knowledge. So there's that. But then you look at how the letter was written, and there's a lot of like misspellings, but I also wonder if the way things were spelled back in the day in ye old England was different as well. But I wonder, like, if the police could have used any of that as like, because first they said he could have been local because of the amount of killings that happened in that one area. Then that he had anatomical knowledge enough to be able to take out part of a kidney, preserve it, and then send it along with that letter. And then you have the letter where it's written. It's honestly like, it's kind of eerie reading it. I think he spells, what is it? He spells kidney without the Y at the end. So I'm just kind of like, how could, I think I'm a detective, obviously, clearly, because I'm solving it right now. But I'm just like, you guys couldn't narrow it down with that. I wonder how many people would have the anatomical knowledge and still not have a higher level of intelligence in the area. It seems like a small area.
Yeah, I mean, maybe he could have been like a local doctor or local surgeon or something, but I guess that wasn't enough for them.
Maybe it's Ted Cruz's ancestor.
It's possible.
It all comes back to Teddy Boy.
Yeah. In the fall of 1888, Jack the Ripper's murder suddenly stopped. Many people demanded to know the identity of Jack the Ripper, but a lack of evidence, a gamut of misinformation and false testimony made it difficult. Over 130 years later, Jack the Ripper's identity and case remains unsolved. Again, do we think that maybe he just could have died and it made it nearly impossible, especially back then in the 1800s with how they had a lack of forensic evidence to find all this stuff out? He just, because he's obviously dead now, maybe he died in 1888.
Yeah, sorry.
Oh, sorry. I was just gonna say, when I was reading up on the case, there was one suspect where it looked like he killed himself around the time that the murders stopped.
Mm-hmm.
I think they found his body. They fished his body out of the river, and when they analyzed his body, they said that he'd had like a few weeks of, his body had decomposed. I don't know how well they were able to actually, how accurate they were in that time frame, because I know that water would help decompose a body more. Is that correct, Haley? I'll defer to you on that.
Yeah, I mean, and it can make this going to be gross. I'm so sorry, but like skin and tissue will come off and it'll be like mushy and just not great. And nowadays we have like cameras that can take decomposed or bodies that have been in water, and it's UV and infrared technology. You can take a picture with a camera and it'll show you what's underneath the dead skin and all that. Like you can see tattoos and things that you wouldn't normally be able to see without the camera. It's really cool, but the camera package is like $4,000 for everything. So,
wow, that just made me really hungry.
Sorry.
Dahmer.
Yeah, right.
Yummy. Maybe that's why I like doing these. Maybe that's why I like doing these podcasts. I like the attention.
Yeah, I apologize for our listeners out there, viewers on YouTube, for that one. But I had a call one time that somebody found a box buried in their backyard with what looked like blood and tissue inside of it, and they were worried it was like a baby or something that had been buried back there. Yes, and so we got called out, and it turned out it was a pet that had died, and they buried it in their backyard. But because it wasn't done, I guess, not buried well enough, a lot of water got in there. So I've had firsthand knowledge of that type of situation. Yeah,
yummy.
Not fun, not great, disgusting, didn't smell good.
Oh my God.
But for those who are in my career field, okay, you can go to what's called the Body Farm. I know that the original one was in Tennessee. There's one in San Marcos down here in Texas. It is called the Body Farm. It is where you donate your body to science, and they bury them in different ways, in water, in shallow graves, in deep graves with bugs, all this stuff. And they study the different rates of decomposition. so that we can learn how water affects the body and stuff like that. And I'm going next month for a class there. So I'm kind of excited.
My in-laws live in
Nice.
Tennessee. I wonder where in Tennessee it is.
I don't remember the exact town, but I know the one in San Marcos is because Texas State. So it's actually like anthropology students that do a lot of the work out there.
That would be a fun little field trip. Go to the body farm.
It's literally what it is. It's just a field with buried bodies. So
Okay. Well, fun fact.
fun fact.
Does it smell?
Well, yeah, I mean, it has to because there's just a bunch of buried bodies and you're digging them up, learning. Like my boss went to a class there and they were digging up bones and they were learning, like, you can tell gender and age and all that by what the bones look like, and animal bones versus human bones. So it's really cool classes that they host there to really help us refine our skills and be able to help solve cases.
Okay. Well, that's really cool.
I'll let you know how it goes after I go next month.
Yes, I'm very curious. I want to know where in Tennessee it is.
I'm gonna look it up for you.
So as far as any possible suspects besides the man who possibly killed himself around the same time as the Jack the Ripper murders, there are various theories about the identity of Jack the Ripper, but authorities did not agree upon any of them. Authorities say that the number of suspects reaches over 100. So imagine trying to fish through
It's a lot.
suspects in the 1800s. It's a lot. The term Ripperology was coined to describe the study and analysis of the Ripper cases, and the murders have inspired many works of fiction. And a little fun fact about Jack the Ripper. In 2011, an independent minor league baseball team, I don't even know what baseball is anymore. I haven't seen it except for in Korea. A minor league baseball team in London, Ontario was named the London Rippers. Featured a logo named Jack Diamond, and their mascot wore a top hat and black cape reminiscent of Jack the Ripper. However, the name and look drew criticism from the mayor and local women's shelter, and they disbanded in 2012.
Like, you think? You think that's...
Never forget, Uncle Jesse's band was Jesse and the Rippers, and that did
Oh
not.
my God.
Jesse
Oh my God.
Populus could have been an ancestor of Jack the Ripper.
Of course, Mark would bring that one up. Real quick, Gabby, it is in Knoxville or outside of Knoxville behind the University of Tennessee, and you cannot take tours. You would have to take a class there.
Damn it. I'll take
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you have to pay for it, which like my police department pays for me to go, so it's not cheap, but yeah.
I'll save up my allowance. That seems really interesting.
It is. It said, I was just looking at an article real quick about it, that it's been there since 1981 in Tennessee. And there's at least 150 decaying specimens in 2007. So who knows how many they have now. Simulate different crime scenes. So some are closed, some aren't, some in water, some are in cars. Like any possible way that you could find a body, they're trying to study. The specific class I'm going to is how bugs. You can tell how long somebody's been dead based on the bug activity.
Ooh.
Ew.
That's going to be interesting. But, I mean, based on the life cycle of the fly, you can tell how long somebody's been down. So it's interesting and gross at the same time.
Interesting. Hopefully you can use that to crack some unsolved cases.
You never know. But I just wanted to throw that little side note in there for you. Knoxville, Tennessee.
Yes, I will keep that in mind the next time I go to Tennessee. Well, that is all I have on Jack the Ripper. Do you guys have any additional comments about him?
I agree that probably him and the Zodiac are probably dead before they could solve it. And now it's just, going to be even harder for that. Like, I think they're both still technically active cases, but are they ever really going to find anybody? Probably not.
Jack the Ripper would be about 150 years old right now.
Yeah, but I mean, he probably died when the murder stopped, I guess is what I meant.
So Mark, you're telling me he's dead? You think he's kind of dead right now?
I think it's a safe assumption.
I had no idea.
That is a bold conclusion to make, sir.
What if he was just like a vampire, right? And we didn't know, and he's still alive.
I think that recently they tried to do like an ancestral DNA analysis on like a shawl from one of the victims, and they tried to use that as a way to sort of, and it was again on the guy who committed suicide not too long after the final victim died, and they were like, yep, it concludes that this was like the DNA of his ancestors match with like the DNA of what's on the shawl and stuff. And I'm just like, I didn't even know we could do that. But I don't even think that would be foolproof.
Yeah, be hard in court.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But yeah, I agree. I think that these guys died before we could get even close to solving them, either through natural means or like this guy maybe on his own.
Yeah, it would have to depend on what ancestors, because we do get DNA from siblings or parents if we need comparison.
I think this was like their grandchildren.
Yeah, so I don't know. That's probably pushing it, but I have no idea. I haven't really delved too much into that.
No, I don't know. But maybe Ancestry.com or 23andMe can help. Who knows? Well, that is all I have for today. We discussed a lot, including recent news and news from the 1800s. Thank you guys so much for joining me today on this very interesting episode. Before you leave, let our listeners and our viewers where they can find you. Who wants to go first?
I'll go first.
Okay.
Oh, now everyone wants to go first. No. You can find me on Twitter at CSI Haley. Maybe I should start tweeting about CSI stuff.
Yeah.
Maybe people need that. Yeah.
And you can find me, Mitch, at Mitch1128 on Twitter. You'll see me there, just complaining. That's what I do. I complain. Sometimes, occasionally, I'm funny. But yeah, find me on there, guys.
Mark, where can everyone find you?
I can be found on twitter.com at Mark Piselli13. That is Piselli.
Awesome. And what kind of things do you tweet about?
My mind is a dangerous place, so pretty much whatever's on it at the time. It could be something. I was tweeting about 2001 NBA basketball earlier today, but sometimes I also was tweeting about Animorphs, the excellent series from the 90s. So it definitely varies.
All incredibly relevant too.
Yes.
And as for me, you can find me on Twitter at MoneybagsGabs, all lowercase, tweeting about God knows what. I'm still waiting for baseball, but we have basketball and hockey coming next month. So
What the fuck?
Sports.
who cares? MLB, move over. We have NBA and NHL playoffs coming. But yeah, until we have actual sports besides NASCAR and golf, I will tweet about God knows what. But thank you guys for listening, and I will see you on the next episode. Bye.
Yeah.
Bye, everyone.